Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So you have to forgive the lighting. These shades give me a lovely striped appearance. But anyway, that's not the point. This is going to be the last video of August, so we're going to get in here. And since I decided to record in the daylight, why not? I thought it'd be great and get it up before the end of the day. That's kind of the goal. But one other thing I wanted to talk about is that I did a live stream slash kind of interview conversation with Josh from Cardboard Chronicles on Friday. And I did that on Friday afternoon. If you caught that editing cut, it's because I had to make sure it was actually Friday afternoon. Yes, it was. So I did that live stream slash conversation on Friday afternoon with Josh, talking about a couple of different hobby topics, soccer cards, poking a little fun at the soccer card market, and having a little fun overall, and with a sprinkling of card ladder. Not really the primary focus of the conversation, but there was a sprinkling of it as well, if that's something you're interested in. Now, I understand that at 80 minutes, it was kind of a long thing. You might want to check it out in chunks if you want to check it out at all, or if you want to kind of see some of what the conversation was like. That's what this video is going to be about. But the timing on it is very specific because one of the things that we discussed on there actually came into play, and one of the things that I mentioned on there came into play a little bit faster than I originally intended. So what I'm going to do is, even though, like I said, an 80-minute video live stream is a little bit much to ask for someone to deal with in one sitting, I want you to check out a clip. So I'm going to show you a clip that's about 2.5 minutes long. So it'll come back, and then I'll come back at the end of it and we'll talk a little bit about what was in the clip. But the clip was me discussing a little bit of a general concept that I've been kind of playing to for a little while, but also something that I think is going to be potentially helpful to you. The card that I'm going to reference and then the example I'm going to give at the end is very specific, but it's less important that you understand the specific card rather than the underlying concept and logic behind it. And I do explain a little bit of that in the clip, and then when I come back, I'll kind of elaborate on that and show you what happened. So I'm going to be right back. But now I'm going to show you a clip from that live stream when I was talking to Josh.
I think if you're not looking for the short-term flip, you're not looking for the short term, I think there is a longer-term play for some of these all-time greats when suddenly the realization kicks in. They're like, when they come up for Hall of Fame induction and suddenly we get a recap of their all-time greatest hits, we get to see their hype video, but their hype video was over a 20-year period and it was real. Like it actually happened. We get to see all these highlights.
There's a lot of those guys in baseball, and I don't know if you ever watched like Alico 3, his YouTube channel.
I love his stuff. Really good stuff.
He's the king of this, what we're talking about right now. He always is like, he was buying Drew Brees like 4 years ago. He's like, guys, look at his numbers. He's like about to break the all-time passing record. And nobody's really paying attention because he's not winning Super Bowls and he's not young anymore. And there's just like so many examples. Like I think someone was talking to me about Max Scherzer, I think, where he's just building and building these huge, huge numbers every year. And he's not the hot young guy anymore, but he's getting close to 300 wins, monster strikeout numbers, like your floor of making the Hall of Fame. He's approaching those numbers to where it's like he's gonna make the Hall of Fame. You might as well just start buying him now before it goes up.
I think his problem is kind of what you were talking about with Barry Sanders, where he's got some interesting stuff. I just don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it. I agree about Scherzer. I just don't know what his rookie is.
Right. Yeah. And for you and I, like we think about what's their key, like rare rookie that not everyone else has. And some of these guys just don't have those, Barry Sanders and Jerry Rice rookie cards. There's tons of those things.
And the thing is, they don't have to be out of 100 because I'll use Pujols as an example. The card that I would love to have gotten, I kind of missed the boat on it, but I haven't really. I guess I have to go and put the money aside. I would hate to do it. It's going to hurt my soul, but I'll do it. But the one that I look at, and it's not super limited, but I think it's a good card, is he's got his 2001 Topps. That's his flagship card. A great card. And I bought one for myself recently because I needed to have it in my collection. I consider that important because he's a great player and I want it for my PC. But if I'm talking about a card like that, what we're talking about, they have a Topps Gold version out of 2001, which is very condition sensitive. It's foil on the front. Now, is it numbered to 100? No. But are they common? No, they're not common. They're still numbered. They're still relative. But they're also condition sensitive because that thing's got foil all over the place. You can chip that thing to hell. So if you got a nice copy, I think you'll do all right. I think you'll do just fine.
Now, you could accuse me of using this clip to be a little bit clairvoyant, especially after I show you what I'm about to show you. So this was an auction that ended on eBay yesterday. So believe it or not, it's not actually for me to brag about how quickly I was correct. In fact, it was kind of annoying that it happened so fast. I suspected that this would probably be the case. That price that you saw there was actually a record for this card. It is the new high has been established for it. That doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean whatever. I still believe in the general concept of it. Is there more room for it to grow? That's going to be hard to say. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the more important. So this is just an illustrative example, but I want to focus in on the general concept that I outlined in the clip that I showed you, and then we're going to use the Pujols card as an example. But the card itself is less important than what we kind of can ascertain from it. And the short version of it is, you do need to believe in, I'll use the term GOATs, but at the end of the day, it's just the all-time players, the truly greats. They do appreciate. Now, in this market, they tend to appreciate a lot faster than you're expecting. And here's the thing. We're establishing these new highs at the same time that Albert Pujols is still kind of in a down area, because he's at the end of his career. He's broken down. He's struggling to get to the next home run would tie Willie Mays' all-time career home run total, and the one after that would surpass him. But he's struggling to get to that last bit. So right now it's the last couple of milestones for Albert Pujols to collect either this season and or next season before he basically, most likely, I don't know, it would be difficult to picture a scenario where he wouldn't call it quits after this year. But like I said, Pujols himself is the example I used, and a good example, but he's not the only example. And the important takeaway here isn't just that I guessed right. It's that I guessed right because I was thinking about it with an underlying logic. The logic being players who are Hall of Fame caliber, or who are pretty much, have already punched their ticket to the Hall of Fame, and they're just kind of playing out the string. And it's one of those things where, as I mentioned in the clip, we're going to be reminded once they're retired and they're no longer playing anymore, and we're not seeing them, at their worst. We're going to be able to remember them at their best. And that general principle, I think holds true. And I think it holds true for various sports, and I think it holds true for that. But that's just one area. The point is that things like that can be, predictions like that can be made, because if you're thinking about it logically and you're not just following the waves that everybody's following, I still believe there's a lot of opportunity. Now, am I suggesting that we're going to see more and more and more highs on this card as we go forward? Like I said, I'm just using this card as an example. No, not necessarily. Although we might. There's no reason to believe we can't. As a collector, how does that affect you? So let's talk about two sides. As a collector, and then as a quote-unquote investor. Someone who's potentially planning on flipping it down the road. So as a collector, how it affects you is, if you wanted cards of these players, so again, I'm using Pujols as an example, but if you want it, then the time may be soon where you may want to consider getting your copy. Because if that's correct, and it holds over time, and again, we do develop that appreciation after he retires and after the Hall of Fame becomes the next logical step, then that's when we're going to see a couple more increases. So a $4,400 sale might become a $5,000 sale. Like, it doesn't have to be this dramatic increase. It doesn't have to double in price, in another 6 months or a year. It could be $5,000, could be $5,500, and then within the next year or two, it could be $6,000, $6,500, and then by the time you're getting close to Hall of Fame time, we've got a couple of years for that, but by the time you get to that point, it might be a 5-figure card. It's hard to say. Like, I'm not making a prediction on that, and the one thing I've tried to do on this channel and avoid is making specific predictions. I'm not telling you to go buy Albert Pujols cards. I'm just looking at it from the perspective of, as a collector who wants to have some of those cards in my collection, I need to understand that, and I need to try to anticipate where I think the market may go, because at least if I want to have a copy in my collection, I've got to still understand that, because I don't want to pay the price from 4 or 5 years from now. I want to pay the price today. Well, I'd rather pay the price from 5 years ago if I had the choice. But if I don't have that choice, then I'd rather pay the price from now versus 5 years from now. The other side of it is, if you're a quote-unquote investor, well, then you want to try to buy as low as you can. Again, the best time would have been 5 or 10 years ago. The next best time is pretty soon. Again, assuming you believe that there is room for for additional growth. If you don't believe that, well, then you should stay completely out of it. And if you're right, then you can take advantage of it when the market retracts, and then maybe the price comes back down. Maybe it comes back down to 2,000 or 1,500 or whatever, and then maybe you go buy it then. So there's nothing wrong with that line of thinking. You just have to understand that there are arguments to be made on both. And if we get away from the Pujols example, then the other thing you got to consider is that there are other players and opportunities that this might fall under. This is just one criteria. Like I said, the fading, future Hall of Famer, that is one category where there's still an opportunity and a chance. Josh mentioned a couple of others in football in that conversation, if you pay attention to it. So there are players that do fall into this category in multiple sports, and they may present an opportunity. Again, I say the word may. And I'm not going to give you like a top 5 list of, players that you should be buying now, because that's not my style and that's not what I'm here to do. But I'm just telling you that you need to at least consider and understand some of these things. even if you're looking at it from the perspective of a collector, at least understand what those quote unquote investors are probably going to be thinking about or looking at. Because that's one category where if you do want to have one for your collection, you got to at least factor this in. Because if you're wrong about the retraction, if the GOATs or high, potential Hall of Fame caliber players don't recede as far back as you want, and they don't come back to the price from 5 years ago, then you're still going to be paying more. So these are things you have to factor in. And again, at the end of the day, it's your money. The one suggestion I would give you above all else, this is the only piece of advice I'm really going to give you on this video, is don't go into debt over this. It's not worth it. They are still cards after all. But if you are thinking about it from the collecting perspective, you do need to factor this in. And if you think about it from the quote-unquote investing perspective, well, then you still need to factor this in. Because then that means from your side of it, you may want to act sooner rather than later. And if from the collector side of it, you may want to act sooner rather than later, or you may be on the wrong side of a new record. Just wanted to throw it out there and also give kind of an excuse to show a clip. There was some really good stuff in that live stream, in my opinion. It is my favorite one so far from the perspective of good information, I think. Although each one of them has had their own flavor, I've enjoyed all of them. So from Matt from the Essential Credentials, is a fantastic guy and makes a great channel, and he's done some great stuff, and we had a great conversation. Chris from CRT Sports Cards, Chris McGill from House of Jordan and Carlotta, all these conversations had a different aspect to them, and I've enjoyed doing some of these live streams, hopefully bringing you some additional information, maybe a different side of some of these folks that you hadn't seen before. That's really kind of the goal with it, and I still can't commit to a regular schedule of them, but when the opportunity presents itself, I'm more than happy to do that. And if you have somebody that you'd like me to try to get on for potentially a future live stream, I would love to get any feedback on that or any comments in it. So again, comments or questions are always welcome. I just wanted to make this video to kind of get your mind thinking about it a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about this topic more later, from the perspective of maybe some things that you should think about. Again, I'm going to try to avoid specifics, but this one, since it came to pass so quickly and we had a good example, I thought this was a good one to show and to give us a little highlight from that stream that obviously had some permanence to right now. So that'll be it for today. Thanks very much as always for watching. Comments and questions are always welcome. Hit the like button if you haven't hit it, because the algorithm likes that kind of thing. Comment if you've got a comment or question, like I said, and subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks very much.